Welcome to Lyra Echo Stories, where every story echoes emotions, memories, and hidden truths. Step in and feel the echo of every tale.
$10,840. That is what I paid every month. Mortgage, $3,200. Electric, $210. Homeowner's insurance, $480. Visa ending in 8803. Minimum payment, $6,950. 4 accounts. 4 auto pays. Set up the summer I turned 19. Sitting on the floor of my first apartment with a laptop balanced on a moving box, because my mother called and said she needed help, and I did not know yet that the word help in her mouth meant forever. I did not miss a single month in 17 years. Not when I was 23 and skipping lunch to make rent. Not when I was 27 and my boyfriend sat me down and said there is nothing left of you for us. Not when I was 31 and a loan officer asked why someone with my income had no savings, and I smiled and said I was conservative with investments, which was a lie so practiced it almost felt like the truth. 17 years. 204 months. Every one of them on time. Until last Tuesday. My mother looked at me across her kitchen table and said 5 words. Not because I asked for money. Not because I asked for anything difficult. I asked for a thank you. 1. After 204 payments, I asked my mother if she had ever wanted to say those 2 words to me. She put her coffee cup down. Looked at me the way you look at a vending machine when it asks for exact change. Shut up and pay, she said. That is what you are good for. 4 seconds of silence. I counted them the way I count everything, because that is what I do. I am a forensic accountant. I trace money that has been hidden, moved, disguised, and buried. I find it. I always find it. For other people, I picked up the check I had brought, put it back in my bag, stood up. She did not ask where I was going. She had already turned back to the television. I drove home. 22 minutes on Highway 26, the Tualatin Mountains dark on both sides, radio off. Pulled into my apartment complex. Took the stairs because the elevator takes too long when your hands need something to do. My laptop was open on the kitchen counter. 2 tabs. Tab 1. A shipping company in Wilmington, Delaware, that I had spent 3 weeks proving had hidden $17 million in phantom invoices for a client who was paying me very well to find it. Tab 2. My mother's Chase autopay portal, still logged in from when I set it up at 19, and never once changed the password. Same skill set, different scale. I sat down. Closed the first tab. Open the second. Mortgage autopay. Cancel. Confirm. Electric autopay. Cancel. Confirm. Homeowner's insurance autopay. Cancel. Confirm. Visa ending in 8803. Cancel. Confirm. 4 clicks. 90 seconds. 17 years. Undone before midnight. I closed the laptop. Filled the kettle. Stood at the window while the water heated. Portland was wet and orange below me, the way it gets in March when the streetlights catch the rain at the right angle. My apartment is small. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. A kitchen that barely fits a table for 2. I have lived here for 6 years. I could afford something bigger. I could afford a house. But there was always that number sitting on my bank statement every month. $10,840 leaving before I could decide what to do with my own life, and somehow the math never worked out. The kettle clicked off. I poured the water. Earl Grey, no sugar. Sat down. I was not shaking. I was not crying. My breathing was even, and my hands were steady. And if you had walked in at that moment, you would have thought I was a woman drinking tea on a Tuesday night. But something behind my ribs had shifted. A door I had kept locked for 17 years had opened about an inch, and through the crack I could feel cold air, and I knew that if I opened it the rest of the way, I would see something I had spent my entire adult life refusing to look at. Not tonight. Tonight was the cancel. The looking would come later. I picked up my phone. 1 notification. A calendar reminder I had set years ago and never deleted. 3rd Saturday. No location. No name. Just those 2 words repeating every month because some appointments do not need explanation. They just need you to show up. I sipped my tea. It was still too hot. I sipped it anyway. I audit fraud for a living. I trace missing money, fake invoices, phantom accounts. I find where the numbers lie. But I had never once, in 17 years, looked at my own. The next morning, I did something I should have done the summer I turned 19. I opened a spreadsheet. And I started with the first month. Nora Cho has shared an office with me for 6 years. She is the only person at Archer and Byrne who knows I pay my mother's bills, because Nora is the kind of person who notices when a senior forensic accountant brings lunch from home every single day and never orders coffee from the cart. She asked me once, about 3 years in. I told her. She went quiet for exactly the amount of time it takes to decide whether to say something honest or something kind. And then she said both. Tessa, you audit Fortune 500 companies. You found a $7 million embezzlement scheme buried inside a nonprofit last year. And you are telling me you never once looked at your own mother's bank statements? I said no. She waited for the rest. There was no rest. I was afraid of what I would find, I said. She nodded once. That was 3 years ago. She never brought it up again. Until the morning after I canceled the auto pays, when I sat down at my desk and told her what my mother had said to me across a kitchen table. Nora did not gasp. She did not say she was sorry. She pulled her chair around to my side of the desk, opened a fresh document on my screen, and said, "Start with the oldest statement you can access." That is why Nora Cho is my only friend. But I did not start with the statements. Not right away. I sat in my car that night, in the parking garage under our building, engine off, and I thought about a diner. I was 12. The diner was called Patsy's, though I never met anyone named Patsy. It sat on Burnside, between a laundromat and a tire shop, and every third Saturday of the month, my father was waiting for me at the last booth, the one next to the pie case where the fluorescent light buzzed at a frequency. Only I seemed to notice. I told my mother I was going to the library. She never checked. Checking would have required interest, and by then her interest in me had become purely transactional. I was the quiet one, the one who did not cause problems, the one who, at 12, was already being groomed for a role I would not understand for another 20 years. My father ordered coffee and whatever was cheapest. I ordered a chocolate milkshake because I was 12 and because he let me. He slid his bank statement across the table, face up, right next to the salt shaker. "Find the mistake," he said. I studied it for 10 minutes. I found an ATM fee of $3.50 that he had been charged at a machine that was not his bank. "Good," he said. "Now find the real one." I looked again. Line 42. $48. Description: miscellaneous. "What is miscellaneous?" he asked. "I do not know. Nobody does." He tapped the line with his index finger, a calloused finger from 30 years of pulling wire through walls. That is the point, Tessie. When somebody writes miscellaneous, they are hoping you will not ask. Your job is to ask. The waitress came by. "More coffee?" My father looked up. "Please. My daughter is auditing me." She laughed. He did not. I did not. We were both completely serious, and the waitress walked away not entirely sure if we were joking, which is the dynamic I have had with most people for the rest of my life. That was 24 years ago. My father taught me to read bank statements in a diner booth. He taught me compound interest at 14, amortization at 15, how to open a savings account at 17. He taught me that money tells the truth even when people do not, and that the difference between a good accountant and a great one is the willingness to follow a number past the point where it becomes uncomfortable. He did this every third Saturday, without fail, for 27 years. My mother never knew. My sister never knew. It was the longest secret of my life, and it was the only one that kept me sane. My mother had her own lessons. They were shorter. Hers was a single sentence, delivered in various tones across various kitchens at various volumes, but always with the same words. "Your father left. I stayed." She said it when I was 9 and asked where he went. She said it when I was 16 and asked if I could visit him. She said it when I was 22 and got my first real job, and she called to say the mortgage was overdue. "Your father left, Tessa. I stayed. The least you can do is help." I believed her. For most of my life, I believed her. That night, in the parking garage, engine off, I logged into the Chase portal on my phone. 17 years of statements, archived digitally. I began at month 1 and I scrolled. Mortgage, electric, insurance, Visa. Everything I expected. Neat, predictable, Unremarkable. Until month 31. A Zelle transfer. $2,200. Recurring. Recipient. S. Moran. S. Moran. Shelby Moran. My sister. I sat in the dark and stared at the number. $2,200 every month. To Shelby. That was the first number that did not reconcile. I should have stopped there. A normal person would have closed the app, driven home, gone to bed, dealt with it in the morning, like someone who believes in boundaries and self-preservation, and not sitting alone in parking garages at 9:30 on a Wednesday night, staring at bank statements on a phone. But I am not a normal person. I am a forensic accountant, and forensic accountants do not stop at the first anomaly. They stop when the last number is accounted for. I scrolled to month 32. 3 nights. That is how long it took to dismantle 17 years of blind faith. Night 1. I mapped the Zelle transfers. $2,200, same day every month, same recipient. S. Moran. Shelby. My sister. The transfers started 37 months ago, which meant that for more than 3 years, my money had been traveling through my mother's account and arriving in Shelby's without either of them telling me and without me bothering to look. Night 2. I followed the cash, $800 in ATM withdrawals every month, always from the machine on Southeast Division, the one near the gym Shelby posted about on Instagram. Not my mother's gym, not my mother's neighborhood. I pulled the Visa statements next. Nordstrom. Sephora. A nail salon on Hawthorne that charges $60 for a manicure, which I know because I have never been there, but apparently my Visa has. Night 3. The math. I sat at my kitchen table with Nora on speaker, because Nora had stopped pretending this was not also her investigation. She does that. Once a problem enters her field of vision, it becomes hers. It is either her best quality or her most exhausting one, depending on the day. Read me the totals, she said. Monthly redirect to Shelby, direct Zelle, $2,200. Monthly cash withdrawals near Shelby's gym and apartment, $800. Monthly charges on my mother's Visa that match Shelby's lifestyle and locations, approximately $1,800. Total monthly redirect, roughly $4,800, out of $10,840. Yes. So less than half your money actually paid your mother's bills. Correct. Nora was quiet. I could hear her pen tapping against something. She does that when she is deciding whether to say the careful thing or the true thing. Your mother did not just take your money, Tessa. She built a pipeline. You on one end, Shelby on the other, and your mother in the middle, operating the valve. I did not argue. The numbers did not leave room for argument. What does Shelby do for work? Nora asked. She is a freelance event planner. And how is business? She planned a retirement party for someone's neighbor last spring. Before that, she launched a subscription box company. A subscription box? Of what? Candles. That was the first one. Then crystals. Then something called curated snack experiences. So a box of chips, artisanal chips. There is a difference, apparently. Tessa. The candle company lasted 4 months. The crystals lasted 2. The snack boxes, she is still technically running, but her last Instagram post about it was in November, and it was a photo of her eating the inventory. Nora exhaled in a way that communicated a very specific kind of professional exhaustion. So Shelby's annual income is what, $15,000? On a good year, and her rent is $2,200 a month, paid by her mother. With my money. Does Shelby know where the money comes from? That was the question I had been avoiding, because the answer determined whether my sister was a participant or a passenger, and I was not ready to know which. I do not know, I said. My mother told her she had savings. Your mother has Social Security, and whatever is left after redirecting your payments. She does not have savings. She has accounting. I scrolled through Shelby's Instagram while Nora talked. There it was, 2 weeks ago. Miami Beach, white sand, turquoise water, a cocktail that probably cost $22. Caption, recharging. #blessed. #living my best life. #grateful. Grateful. The word sat in my throat like a fishbone. I traced the trip. Flights. Booked on my mother's visa. Hotel. 4 nights at a mid-range place on Collins Avenue, $960. Restaurants, spa, shopping. Another $3,800 and change. Total, approximately $4,800 for 4 days in Florida. The exact amount redirected from my account every month. My sister's vacation cost exactly what I paid in invisible labor for 30 days. 1 month of my life converted into 4 days of hers. Tessa? I am here. What are you going to do? I closed the laptop. The spreadsheet had 47 columns now. 37 months of data. Every dollar accounted for. Every transfer traced. Every lie assigned a line number. What I always do, I said. Follow the money. The money is followed. It is sitting in your spreadsheet right now. Then I'm going to follow it all the way to the end. The full 17 years. Every month. Every dollar. That is going to take you another week. I have been paying for 17 years, Nora. I can spend 1 more week reading. She did not argue. She knew the voice. The one that does not negotiate, does not waver, does not ask for permission. The INTJ voice, though she has never used that word. She just calls it my audit voice. I opened the laptop again. Scrolled back. Month 1. The summer I was 19, on the floor of my first apartment, setting up autopay because my mother said she needed help. Have you ever paid for something your entire adult life and never once asked where the money actually went? Not because you did not care, because you cared too much. Because asking would have meant seeing, and seeing would have meant choosing, and choosing would have meant losing the one person who was supposed to love you for free. I had the numbers now. All of them. What I did not have, what I needed before I could do anything with those numbers, was the courage to feel what they meant. That part came next. And it almost broke me. The spreadsheet took 6 more nights to complete. 17 years. 204 months. Every payment, every transfer, every line item traced and categorized and color-coded. Because that is what I do when I cannot process something emotionally. I organize it. By the time I finished, it was Saturday morning. I printed the whole thing. 47 columns, 6 pages, landscape orientation, because portrait could not hold all the damage. I laid the pages out on my apartment floor, side by side, in chronological order, and I sat cross-legged in the middle of them like a woman sitting in the wreckage of something she had built with her own hands and set on fire with someone else's match. The redirect to Shelby had started 37 months ago, but the pattern was older than that. Before Shelby, there were other leaks. A recurring charge to a furniture store that my mother did not need furniture from. Cash withdrawals that spiked every December, every August, every May. Money moving in directions I had never questioned, because questioning meant looking, and looking meant seeing, and seeing meant choosing, and I had spent 17 years terrified of the choice. I sat there and I did the thing I had been avoiding since the night I canceled the auto pays. I let the numbers become memories. 23 years old. My college friends planned a trip to Big Sur. 5 days, rental car, campsite on the coast. Total cost per person. $400. I said I could not afford it. I could afford it. But $400 was $400 less in the account that bled $10,840 every month. And I had already learned that the bleeding came first, and my life came second. My friends went without me. They still talk about that trip. I still do not. 27 years old. Aaron. 4 years together, he was kind and patient, and he made a pot of coffee every morning without being asked, which is a small thing unless you have never had it, in which case it is everything. We broke up on a Sunday in October. He sat on the edge of the bed and said, "Tess, I love you, but you give everything to your mother and there is nothing left. Not for me, not even for you." I told him he did not understand. He said he understood perfectly. He was right. I was right. We were both right about different things, and that is the kind of breakup you do not recover from because nobody was wrong. 31 years old. A loan officer at a credit union in Lake Oswego. I had driven out there because the Portland branches felt too close to home, too close to the chance of someone I knew seeing me ask for something I should have been able to afford 10 times over. The loan officer reviewed my file. Good credit. Solid income. She looked up and said, Your debt-to-income ratio is unusually high for someone in your bracket. Can you explain the recurring outflows? I smiled and said I had family obligations. She nodded. She did not ask what kind. I did not volunteer. The mortgage application sat in my glove compartment for 3 weeks before I shredded it. 3 memories. 3 moments when I could have stopped, asked, looked. 3 moments when the exit door was right there, and I walked past it because walking through it meant admitting that my mother was not who I needed her to be, and that was a number I was not prepared to reconcile. I sat on the floor with the spreadsheet and I thought about my father, not the version my mother told, not the man who left, who abandoned, who chose himself. The man I actually knew, the one who sat in a booth every 3rd Saturday and taught me how to read the truth in a row of numbers. I was 17, still at Patsy's. Though Patsy's had changed owners twice, and the pie case had been replaced with a pastry display that was never fully stocked. My father and I were filling out a savings account application on the table, between his coffee and my milkshake, using a borrowed pen from the waitress because neither of us had brought one. The form asked for his social security number. He wrote it wrong. Scratched it out. Wrote it wrong again. Tessie, what is my social? I told him. He stared at me. How do you know my social security number? You left a tax return on the table last year. I read it. He paused for a long time, the way he paused when he was feeling something too large for the booth. Then he said, "You are better at this than me already. You taught me," I said. He looked down at the pancake he had ordered, but barely touched. He always ordered pancakes. He never finished them. I think he ordered them because they were what he used to make for me on Saturday mornings before he left, and eating them in a diner was as close as he could get to that kitchen without going back to it. "I taught you the numbers," he said. "The courage, that is yours." He held that for 1 second. Maybe 2. Then he pushed the plate toward me. "You gonna eat that bacon?" I took the bacon. He finished his coffee. We did not talk about courage again. That was not how we worked. We worked in numbers and in breakfast food and in showing up, month after month, without needing to explain why. That memory found me on the floor of my apartment at 2 in the morning, surrounded by 6 pages of evidence, and it broke something open. I cried, not the way people cry in movies, not with their hands over their mouth and their shoulders shaking beautifully. I cried the way a woman cries when she has held a number in her chest for 17 years and finally lets it out. Ugly. Long. The kind of crying that makes your ribs hurt afterward, like something structural shifted. I was not crying because my mother stole from me. I was not crying because my sister lived on money I earned. I was crying because I knew, somewhere underneath the autopays and the monthly checks and the silence, I had always known, and I had chosen not to look. The forensic accountant, who could trace $17 million through shell companies in Delaware, could not bring herself to open her own mother's bank statement because the audit she was afraid of was never about the money. It was about the answer. My father told me once in that booth, with that coffee, with that borrowed pen, always know where your money goes. And I had broken that rule every month for 17 years. Not because I was careless, but because I was loyal. And loyalty, when it runs in one direction long enough, starts to look a lot like something else. I sat on the floor until the crying stopped. Then I stood up, washed my face, collected the 6 pages, aligned the edges, put them in a manila folder, labeled it in black marker. Morin Household Financial Audit, months 1 through 204. The forensic accountant was back, and she had a case to close. 3 days later, my mother sent a text. All capitals. The word behavior. And a dinner invitation that was not really an invitation. My mother has never been a passive woman. She does not wait for things to happen to her. She happens to things. So when 14 days passed and her mortgage bounced and her electric bill went unpaid and her insurance company sent a letter she did not understand, she did not sit quietly in her kitchen and wonder what had gone wrong. She picked up her phone and she went to war. I know this because the calls started on a Wednesday. The first one came from my Aunt Helen, my mother's older sister, who lives in Beaverton and has never once in my life asked me how I was doing without following it with a request. "Tessa, your mother called me in tears. She says you cut her off. After everything she has done for you girls. After raising you alone, I just think you should know how much you have hurt her." I held the phone away from my ear and looked at it the way you look at a parking ticket. not with anger. With the quiet recognition that someone has decided you owe them something, and there is a system in place to collect. "Thank you for calling, Aunt Helen," I said. "She raised you alone, Tessa. I appreciate you sharing that. Are you even listening to me?" "I am. I am just not agreeing with you. Those are different things." She hung up. My Uncle Robert called 40 minutes later. Same script, different voice. Then my mother's neighbor, Donna, who I have spoken to exactly twice in my life, once at a barbecue and once when she needed someone to move a bookshelf. Then a woman named Jean, who I later determined was someone from my mother's book club, which I did not know she had, which tells you something about how much of my mother's life I was actually part of versus how much of her bills I was expected to pay. 4 calls in one afternoon. Each one delivered the same message in slightly different packaging. Your mother sacrificed everything. Your mother raised you alone. Your mother deserves better. My mother had not called me directly. She did not need to. She had built a chorus, and the chorus was singing her version of the song, and every voice said the same thing because every voice had been given the same script. She did not raise me alone, but nobody in that chorus knew that. I sat at my desk at work and let the voicemails accumulate. Nora watched from across our shared office, her reading glasses low on her nose, her expression the one she uses when she is gathering data before issuing a verdict. "How many so far?" she asked. 4 calls, 3 voicemails, 1 text from someone named Jean. "Who is Jean?" "Book club." "Your mother has a book club?" "Apparently." "What do they read?" "I genuinely do not know, Nora. I bet it is something with a woman on the cover running through a field." I almost smiled. Almost. The voicemails kept coming. That evening, Shelby called. My sister's name appeared on my phone at 7:42, which was unusual because Shelby communicates primarily through Instagram stories and occasional texts that consist entirely of emojis and the word literally. An actual phone call meant something had penetrated the membrane. "Hey," she said. Her voice was light, the way it gets when she is trying to sound casual about something that is not casual at all. "So, Mom is kind of freaking out? She says you stopped helping with the bills or whatever? What is going on?" I listened to her voice. The cadence, the places where it lifted, where it dropped. I do this. I listen to the music underneath the words, because the words in my family have always been unreliable, but the music never lies. Shelby was not calling because she was worried about our mother. Shelby was calling because Shelby's rent had not arrived this month. The Zelle for $2,200 had not come through, and the buffer between Shelby Moran and financial reality was exactly the width of a monthly transfer she had never questioned, from a source she had never confirmed, and now the transfer was late. And the source was quiet, and Shelby could feel the floor shifting underneath her curated life. "Ask Mom where the money was coming from, Shelby," I said. "All of it." "What do you mean?" "Ask her where the $2,200 a month for your rent has been coming from. Ask her about the $800 in cash near your gym. Ask her about the Nordstrom charges and the Miami trip and the candle company and the crystal company and the curated snack experiences. Ask her where all of it came from." Silence. Long enough that I could hear the refrigerator humming in her apartment, the apartment I paid for. The refrigerator that kept cold the groceries I funded. The silence that was happening in a life I had been bankrolling without receiving so much as a text message on my birthday. "Tessa, I do not understand what you are talking about." "Then ask Mom. She will explain. Or she will not. Either way, you will have your answer." I hung up, put my phone face down on the counter, stood there for a minute, hands flat on the granite, breathing. Then I opened my laptop and began the final preparation. The spreadsheet was done. I had spent 6 nights refining it, the way I refine client deliverables before a deposition, because in my world, a spreadsheet is not just a document, it is an argument. Every column header is a claim, every cell is evidence, every formula is logic, and when the logic is clean, the argument makes itself. I printed it, 6 pages, color-coded, blue highlighting for legitimate expenses, mortgage payment, electric bill, homeowner's insurance, visa minimum. These were real. These were what I thought I was paying for. Red highlighting for money redirected to Shelby, Zelle transfers, ATM withdrawals, Visa charges at locations near Shelby's apartment and frequented by Shelby's Instagram account. Yellow highlighting for charges I could not trace definitively, charges that fell into the category my father would have called miscellaneous, which meant someone was hoping I would not ask. Nora came over that evening with Thai food and a bottle of wine she set on my counter without comment. She looked at the 6 pages spread across my kitchen table, looked at the color coding, looked at the manila folder. "You are really bringing a spreadsheet to Sunday dinner," she said. "This is how I argue. Most people bring wine." She gestured at the bottle she had just set down. "Wine does not prove fraud." "No," Nora said, picking up page 3 and holding it at an angle, the way she reads depositions. "But it does help you survive the conversation after." She stayed until 10. We ate pad thai and she asked me one question for every page of the spreadsheet. Not because she doubted my work, but because that is what good auditors do. They stress test. They look for the number that does not hold. She found nothing. The numbers held. At the door, she stopped. "Tessa." "Yes." "What are you going to do if she cries?" I looked at her. "My mother does not cry. My mother performs crying. There is a difference." "And if Shelby cries?" That question sat in my chest like a stone I could not put down. Because Shelby's tears, if they came, would be real. Shelby does not perform. Shelby simply has never been asked to carry anything heavy enough to require performance. "Then I will let her cry," I said. "And I will not pick up the check." Nora left. I locked the door, washed the takeout containers, dried them, stacked them, put the spreadsheet back in the folder. Put the folder in my bag. Sunday, 6 o'clock. The table would be set, the audience would be assembled, and my mother would be waiting with the only script she had ever written, the one where she stayed and my father left, and I owed her everything for the difference. I was bringing a different script. 6 pages, 47 columns. 17 years. And one question I had never been allowed to ask. What would you bring to that dinner? Forgiveness or evidence? The last time I told my father about the money was a Saturday in November, 7 years ago. I was 29. He was 57 and had just moved to Bend, 3 hours east of Portland, because his knees were getting worse, and because Bend was the kind of town where a retired electrician could fix things for neighbors in exchange for conversation and pie, which was all he had ever really wanted. The diner was new, not Patsy's, a place called the Juniper, on a side street near the river, with wood-paneled walls, and a waitress who called everyone honey, and a pie case that was smaller than the one at Patsy's, but better stocked. My father had already found the last booth. He always found the last booth. I think he could walk into any restaurant in the country and within 10 seconds identify the table farthest from the door, closest to the kitchen, with a clear view of whoever walks in, not because he was paranoid, because he was a man who had spent 20 years being someone's secret. And secrets sit more comfortably in the back of the room. I told him about the autopays, all of them, the amounts, the accounts, the years. I told him about the loan officer in Lake Oswego and the mortgage application I shredded. I told him about Aaron, who had left because there was nothing left. I laid it all out the way I lay out an audit, line by line, because that was the only language we shared that did not require either of us to say the word love. He listened. He did not interrupt. He picked up his coffee cup once, put it down without drinking, picked it up again. When I finished, he looked out the window. The Deschutes River was low that time of year, gray-green and slow, and he watched it the way he watches things he cannot fix. "How much?" he said. I told him the monthly number. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You know what I charge to rewire a kitchen?" "No." "About $4,000. Takes me 3 weeks. 21 days of pulling wire, cutting drywall, labeling breakers. Hard work. Good work." He paused. "You are paying more than double that every month. For nothing. And nobody has ever said thank you." "I know. Do you?" That question landed differently than I expected. Not sharp. Tired. Like he had been waiting for me to arrive at a number he had calculated years ago and had been sitting with ever since. Alone. In the back booth. Unable to say anything, because saying something would have meant telling me what to do, and my father is many things, but he is not a man who tells his daughter what to do. He gives her the tools. He trusts her to use them. When you are ready to stop, he said, you will stop. I am not going to tell you when. That is not my job anymore. Then what is your job? He looked at me. Then he picked up his coffee, took one slow sip, set it down with both hands, the way you set something down when you want it to stay exactly where it is. Sitting in this booth on the third Saturday of every month. That is my job. I did not cry, neither did he. We ordered lunch. He had the turkey club. I had the grilled cheese because I had not yet learned to order what I actually wanted instead of what was cheapest, and because old habits from the years of bleeding, $10,840 a month, do not vanish just because you have identified them. They linger. They sit in your wallet like a phantom limb. 7 years later, on the night before Sunday dinner, I sat in my car in the parking lot of my apartment complex and I could not go inside. The engine was off. The folder was on the passenger seat. 6 pages, 47 columns, 204 months. Everything I needed, and I could not move, because something had settled into my chest that was heavier than numbers and colder than data. And it had a name I did not want to say out loud. I was afraid of becoming my father. Not the man I knew. Not the man in the booth, the man with the coffee, the man who showed up every third Saturday for 27 years without fail. I was afraid of becoming the version of my father that my mother had built, the version that existed in her story, the one she had told to Aunt Helen and Uncle Robert and Donna and Jean from book club and every person in her orbit for 27 years. The one who left, the one who abandoned, the one who chose himself over his family. If I walked into that dining room tomorrow with a spreadsheet and a truth, I would become that version. Not in fact, but in the only reality that mattered to the people sitting at that table, because my mother had spent decades building a reality in which leaving is the sin and staying is the virtue, and anyone who challenges that equation is guilty by definition. Shelby would say it. I knew she would say it because it was the only weapon she had. You are just like Dad. 4 words. And part of me, the part that had been paying bills for 17 years to avoid hearing those words, would believe them. I picked up my phone, texted Nora. What if I am wrong? 3 dots. Then, you found $177,000 in redirected funds over 37 months. You traced every transfer. You verified every amount. The spreadsheet is not wrong. You are not wrong. You are scared. Those are different things. I read it twice, 3 times. Put the phone down. She was right. Fear and error look the same from the inside. They both make you hesitate. They both make you question what you know. But error means the numbers do not add up. Fear means they do, and you wish they did not. My numbers added up, every one of them. I went inside. I slept. Not well, but I slept, which is more than I expected. Sunday morning I woke up early, 6:15, made coffee, stood at the window. Portland was doing the thing it does in early spring, where the sky cannot decide between gray and pale blue and settles on both, and the trees along the street are just barely starting to bud, and everything looks like it is waiting for permission to begin. I got dressed. Nothing special. Black pants, a gray blouse, flat shoes. I did not dress for war. I dressed for work. Because that is what this was. A deliverable, a presentation of findings. A 6-page argument that would make itself, if I stayed calm enough to let it. I picked up the folder, checked the pages. All 6, in order. Blue, red, yellow. Legitimate, redirected, unaccounted. The color system my father never taught me but would have understood, because it was the same logic he used when he labeled breaker boxes. Blue for live, red for danger, yellow for unknown. I got in the car, pulled out of the lot, turned onto Burnside, the same street where Patsy's Diner used to be, before it became a ramen shop, before the ramen shop became a co-working space, before the co-working space closed and the windows went dark. The diner was gone, but the lesson was still there, riding in the passenger seat next to the folder, spoken in my father's voice, plain and clear. When somebody writes miscellaneous, they are hoping you will not ask. I was done not asking. My mother's porch light was on when I pulled into the driveway at 5:53. The front door was open. Inside, I could hear her voice, already loud, already confident. already performing for the audience she had assembled. I picked up the folder, closed the car door, walked up the steps, and for the first time in 17 years, I was not carrying a check. The table was set for 6. My mother Shelby, Aunt Helen, Uncle Robert, myself, and one empty chair that I assumed was aspirational. Placemats, cloth napkins, a pot roast in the center that smelled like rosemary and performance, because my mother has never cooked a pot roast in her life for fewer than 3 witnesses. She was standing at the head of the table when I walked in. Not sitting, standing, arms at her sides, chin slightly raised, the posture of a woman who has rehearsed her opening line and is waiting for her audience to settle. Aunt Helen was in the chair nearest the kitchen, clutching a glass of white wine like a life preserver. Uncle Robert sat across from her, hands folded, looking at the tablecloth, the way men look at tablecloths when they know they are about to be in the middle of something they cannot fix with tools. Shelby was at the far end, phone face down on the table, which meant she was trying to be present, which meant she was nervous. "Tessa," my mother said. Not hello, not thank you for coming, just my name, delivered like a summons. "Mom," I sat down, put my bag on the floor beside my chair. Did not open it. Not yet. My mother began, "I am glad we are all here, because I think it is important for this family to talk about what has happened. I raised my daughters alone." She looked at Helen, who nodded. "I worked. I sacrificed. I gave everything I had to make sure you girls had a roof and food and a life. And now one of my daughters has decided, apparently, that I do not deserve help anymore." She paused. Not for breath, for effect. My mother pauses the way a conductor lifts a baton. She expects the orchestra to follow. "Tessa, I do not know what has gotten into you, but this family does not abandon each other. We are not your father." There it was, the sentence. The one she had been sharpening for 27 years, the one she kept in a drawer like a kitchen knife, ready for any occasion that required cutting. I let it sit. I let everyone at the table absorb it, feel the weight of it, arrange their sympathies accordingly. Then I reached into my bag and placed the folder on the table. "What is that?" my mother said. "Numbers." I opened the folder. Page 1. I did not look at my mother. I looked at Aunt Helen, because Aunt Helen was the one who had called me and said I should be ashamed, and Aunt Helen deserved to see what shame actually looks like when it is itemized. This is 37 months of bank statements from my mother's household accounts. I have access because I set up the auto-pay system 17 years ago. I pointed to the first column. Column A is income. That is the $10,840 I sent every month. Mortgage, electric, insurance, credit card. "Tessa, this is not the time." Aunt Helen's voice trailed off when she saw the first page. "It is exactly the time." I turned to page 2. Column B is outflow, where the money went after it arrived in my mother's account, and this is where the numbers stop matching. The room was quiet, not the polite quiet of a dinner party. The tight quiet of a deposition, where everyone can feel that the next sentence is going to cost someone something. $2,200. Zelle transfer. Every month. Recipient. S. Moran. I looked at Shelby. "That is your rent, Shelby." Shelby opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Mom said she had savings. She does not have savings. She has my auto pay and her Social Security. That is all. I turned to page 3. $800 in monthly ATM withdrawals from the machine on Southeast Division. That is near your gym and your apartment, not near Mom's house. Plus approximately $1,800 in monthly charges on Mom's Visa at Nordstrom, Sephora, restaurants and stores that match your Instagram activity. I paused, including a trip to Miami 2 weeks ago, 4 days, $4,800. Flights, hotel, restaurants, and a spa visit on Collins Avenue. Shelby's face had gone white. Not the white of embarrassment. The white of someone who is watching the floor they have been standing on dissolve, tile by tile, and realizing there is nothing underneath. "I did not know," she said. Her voice was small. "Column A is where the money came from," I said. "That is me. Column B is where it went. That is you." Of the $10,840 I sent every month, approximately $4,800, nearly half, was redirected to fund your life, your rent, your gym, your clothes, your trips, your subscription box companies that lasted a combined 8 months. My mother slammed her hand on the table. Not hard enough to rattle the dishes, but hard enough to remind everyone that she was still standing. Everything I did was for this family. No, I said. I did not raise my voice. I lowered it, the way I do in depositions when I need the room to lean in. Everything I paid was for this family. What you did was redirect it. You built a pipeline, Mom, me on one end, Shelby on the other, and you in the middle, deciding where my money went without my knowledge or consent. You offered, my mother said. You offered to help. You set up the payments yourself. I offered to pay your mortgage and your bills. I did not offer to fund my sister's lifestyle through your account. There is a difference. There is no difference. Family helps family. Family does not lie to family about where the money goes. My mother looked at Helen. Helen looked at the tablecloth. My mother looked at Robert. Robert had not moved since I sat down. My mother's chorus was silent. The script she had written for them did not include a scene where the numbers were on the table, highlighted in 3 colors, with receipts. She reached for the last weapon, the one she always reaches for when the others fail, the one she has been polishing for 27 years, the one that has never once failed to end a conversation in her favor. Your father left, she said. Her voice cracked just slightly on the word father. I could not tell if the crack was real or performed. After 27 years of performance, I am not sure she knows the difference either. Your father left, Tessa. I stayed. I raised you alone. And this is how you repay me. Shelby was crying now. Quiet tears, the real kind, the kind that come from confusion rather than manipulation. She looked at me through wet eyes and said the 4 words I had known she would say since the parking lot, since the dark night in my car, since the moment I decided to come here with a folder instead of a check. You are just like Dad, she said. You always leave. The table went silent. Aunt Helen put her wineglass down. Uncle Robert unfolded his hands for the first time. I looked at my sister, then at my mother, then back at Shelby. He did not leave us, I said. My mother's face changed. Not slowly, all at once, like a mask being removed, except the mask was the only face any of them had ever seen. He left you, Mom. Not us. You. I kept my voice level, steady, the audit voice. I know because I have been having breakfast with Dad every month for 27 years. Booth in the back, near the pie case. He taught me to read bank statements when I was 12. He helped me open my first savings account when I was 17. He was at my college graduation, row 14, aisle seat. You were in the 3rd row. You never saw him. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. He did not abandon this family. He left a situation. And he spent 27 years making sure I knew the difference. Every 3rd Saturday. Without fail, Shelby stared at me. That is not true. It is true. And I think, somewhere underneath everything she has told you, Mom knows it is true too. I looked at my mother. She was still standing at the head of the table, but something structural had shifted. The posture was the same. The chin was still raised, but her eyes had gone somewhere far away, somewhere behind the rehearsed lines and the orchestrated sympathy and the 27 years of a story she had told so many times she had forgotten it was a story. I am not going to explain why he left, Mom. You already know why. I closed the folder, stood up, pushed in my chair, because even now, even in this moment, I am the kind of person who pushes in her chair. Tessa, my mother said. Just my name. No sentence after it. No script. For the first time in my memory, my mother said my name and had nothing prepared to follow it. I picked up my bag, walked to the door, did not look back. Not because I was being dramatic, because there was nothing left at that table that I needed to see. The porch light was still on when I stepped outside. The air was cold and clean, the way Portland gets after rain when the clouds have moved east, and the sky opens up for exactly long enough to remind you that blue still exists. I got in the car, put the folder on the passenger seat, turned the key, and I drove home with the windows down, breathing in the first air I had tasted in 17 years that did not cost me $10,840 a month. 2 days after the dinner, I sat at my kitchen table and built one final spreadsheet. Not the audit. The audit was finished. This was something else. This was the total, 17 years of payments compiled into a single page, Every month accounted for, every dollar traced. I formatted it the way I format client deliverables: clean headers, consistent decimal alignment, a summary row at the bottom in bold. I am a forensic accountant. Even my grief comes with footnotes. The number at the bottom was not a surprise. I had known it for weeks, carried it around in my chest like a stone I could not set down. But seeing it in bold, in the summary row, in the font I use for final reports, gave it a weight that mental arithmetic never could. $220,060. I opened my email, created a new message, typed my mother's address, left the subject line blank, because there was no subject that could contain what I was about to say in fewer than a paragraph, and a paragraph would have been too many words. I attached the file. In the body of the email, I wrote 2 sentences. This is not a bill. This is a receipt, so you know exactly what you spent and on whom. I pressed send, closed the laptop, made tea. Earl Grey, no sugar, stood at the window and watched Portland do the thing it does on Tuesday mornings, which is look exactly the same as it looked on every other morning I had stood at this window trying to feel something I could not name. The tea was still too hot. I sipped it anyway. Some habits do not change just because you have changed everything else. The weeks that followed were quiet in the way that aftermath is quiet. Not peaceful, just empty of the noise that used to fill it. My mother's mortgage payment was 30 days late, then 60, then 90. I know this because the bank sent me a notice, since my name was still on the original auto-pay authorization. I called the bank, explained that I was no longer responsible, and asked them to remove my contact information. The woman on the phone asked if I wanted to reinstate the payment. I said no. She asked if I was sure. I said I was sure in the way that only someone who has spent 6 nights auditing her own mother's bank statements can be sure. Which is completely. The house went into foreclosure proceedings in the 4th month. My mother moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in Tigard, a suburb south of Portland, where the rent was low enough for Social Security to cover, and the walls were thin enough to hear the neighbors. I did not help her move. I did not visit. Shelby lasted longer than I expected. She called my mother every day for the first 2 weeks after the dinner, then every other day, then twice a week, then once. By the 2nd month, the calls were weekly. By the 3rd, they had stopped. Not because Shelby was angry, because Shelby had built a life on a foundation she did not know was borrowed, and when the foundation was removed, the structure did not hold. Without the $2,200 a month, without the Nordstrom charges, and the Sephora runs and the trips to Miami, Shelby's curated life contracted to its actual size, which was a studio apartment and a subscription box company that sold fewer than 11 units in its final month. She called me once, not to apologize, not to yell, just to say, I did not know, Tessa. I said, I believe you. And I did. Shelby did not know where the money came from, the way I did not know where the money went. We were both blind, just in different directions. She was blind to the source. I was blind to the destination. And our mother had positioned herself in the middle, counting on neither of us to look past her. When you are ready to talk about what happened and not what you need, I said, call me. She said okay. She has not called yet. But she said okay, and that is a different word than goodbye. My mother called me every day for 3 weeks. The voicemails change the way weather changes, in stages you can track if you are paying attention. Week 1, anger. After everything I have sacrificed, after everything I gave you, you had no right to do this in front of Helen and Robert. You had no right. Week 2, bargaining. Tessa, if you would just call me back, we could work this out. I am willing to sit down. I am willing to talk. I just need you to understand my side. Week 3. A voicemail that lasted 47 seconds and contained no words, just breathing. Slow, uneven breathing, the kind that comes from a woman sitting alone in a 1-bedroom apartment in Tigard, holding a phone to her ear, waiting for something to come out of her mouth, and finding nothing there. No script. No performance. No sentence that starts with your father left and ends with I stayed. Just breath. I listened to that voicemail twice. I did not call back. But I did not delete it either. I saved it in a folder on my phone labeled miscellaneous, which is a word that means someone is hoping you will not ask, and also a word that means I am not ready to answer. On the third Saturday of the following month, I got in my car at 7 in the morning and drove east. Highway 26 to 97, through the Warm Springs Reservation, past the high desert where the pine trees thin out and the sky gets so wide it feels like the earth is trying to show you something it has been keeping to itself. 3 hours, no music, no podcast, just the road and the engine and the sound of a woman driving toward the only person who had never asked her for a payment. The juniper was still there, wood-paneled walls, small pie case, the waitress who called everyone honey. My father was already seated, last booth, near the pie case. Coffee in front of him, black, no sugar. Menu closed because he already knew what he was ordering. The way he has known for 20 years, the way he will know for 20 more if his knees hold out, and the juniper stays open, and the booth in the back keeps being available on the third Saturday. I sat down across from him. He looked at me, not with surprise, not with pity, with the steady, weathered look of a man who has been waiting for something to arrive for a very long time and is not going to ruin the moment by speaking too soon. "I read the numbers, Dad," I said. "I know," he said. "Took you a while." "It did. You okay?" "Not yet, but the numbers are clean," he nodded. That was enough. In our language, clean numbers is the closest thing to "I am going to be all right." He understood. The waitress came. He ordered pancakes. I ordered the grilled cheese, then stopped myself. "Actually," I said, "I will have the turkey club." He looked up from his menu. One eyebrow. The faintest trace of a smile. The kind of smile that does not need to be wide because it is deep. "Turkey club," he repeated. "I am done ordering the cheapest thing on the menu." He set the menu down, picked up his coffee, took one long sip, set it back with both hands, the way you set something down when you want it to stay exactly where it is. "You gonna eat that bacon?" "Every piece." We sat in the last booth of a diner in Bend, Oregon, on the third Saturday of the month, and we ate breakfast the way we have eaten breakfast for 27 years. Quietly, completely, without needing to explain to each other why we were there, because we had never needed to explain. We just showed up. That was the whole thing. That was the entire job. I lost a mother that Sunday at a dinner table in Portland. Or maybe I just stopped pretending I had one. Either way, on the third Saturday of every month, in a booth near the pie case, I have a father who taught me how to read numbers, and never once asked me to pay for the privilege. He has been there all along, and now, so have I. If someone you love has been sitting in a booth somewhere, waiting for you your whole life, and you have been too afraid to tell anyone they exist, let me ask you this. What are you waiting for? The numbers are already clean. The only thing left is the drive. Here is what nobody tells you about being the one who pays. You stop asking questions because the answers might cost you more than the money ever did. You tell yourself that love and sacrifice are the same thing, and by the time you realize they are not, the bill has been running for years, and the only person who never got paid is you. If you are the one holding your family together financially, do one thing this week. Look at your own numbers, not to accuse anyone, just to see, because the moment you stop being afraid of what the spreadsheet says is the moment you stop being controlled by it. And if someone in your life has been sitting quietly in the background, showing up for you without asking for credit, without demanding a thank you, tell them you see them. Before another Saturday passes, who in your life has been your booth in the back? And have you told them lately?
Thank you for being part of Lyra Echo Stories. If this story stayed with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because every echo never truly fades.